Hey, welcome. Today, we're going to try to unlock the cognitive blueprint of an entire civilization. We are going deep into the conceptual structure of Hindu society, and we're going to be guided by the really groundbreaking work of anthropologist Veena. Okay, so let's just dive right in. When most of us in the West think of Hindu society, we probably picture the caste system as this, rigid ladder, a simple hierarchy from top to bottom. But what if that's a massive oversimplification? Today, we're going to challenge that whole view by asking a totally different question. How did Hindu texts themselves imagine their own social world? So our guide for this journey is this fascinating text called the Dharmaranya Purana. Think of it as a kind of mythical history that was written somewhere between the 14th and 15th centuries. Now, it was created by the Mod Brahmin and Banya castes in Gujarat, not just to, write down what happened, but to actually define who they were, to carve out their place in the cosmic and social order. And this quote from Veena herself, it gets right to the heart of what we're doing here. See, we're not just reading some ancient text for historical facts. We're treating its words, its categories, as if they're alive, just packed with layers and layers of meaning. And by analyzing them, we can start to decode the very grammar, the cognitive blueprint that a society uses to make sense of itself. So, how does this blueprint actually work? Well, Das argues that instead of that simple ladder, the conceptual world of this Purana is built around the really dynamic relationships between three key figures. And these aren't just social roles. They are the three poles that define the entire universe of social and, asocial life: the Brahmin, the king, and the renouncer. First up, we've got the Brahmin, the priest. Now, according to the text, the Brahmins are created by the gods to basically transform physical space into a sacred social space. Their power comes from spiritual merit, something they have from birth. But, and this is absolutely the key, they have no worldly power. They can perform the sacrifices, sure, but they can't protect themselves from demons. And that's exactly where the king comes in. The king is the master of the temporal, earthly world. He's got the army, he protects the kingdom, and he provides for the Brahmins. But he doesn't have that inherent spiritual merit. So to make his rule legitimate and to gain merit for himself, he is completely dependent on the Brahmins to perform all the necessary rituals for him. And finally, there's the wild card, the sannyasi, or the renouncer. This is the ascetic, the person who literally steps outside of society. He renounces everything: possessions, family, all the caste obligations. And by performing these severe austerities, or tapa, he gets this immense personal spiritual power, a power that can even challenge the gods. He represents a completely different asocial path to power. So when you look at it this way, you can see it's not a ladder at all, right? It's a triangle of mutual dependence and opposition. The Brahmin and the king, they need each other to be complete. One gives spiritual legitimacy, the other gives physical protection. And the sannyasi? He stands apart, in opposition to both of them, representing this powerful path that exists entirely outside their social world. Now, this brings us to the Brahmin's really unique position. As a priest, he's central to the whole social world. But at the same time, he shares these key values with the sannyasi. For example, in the myths, the Brahmins at first refuse the king's gifts, and they cite this duty of non-accumulation, which is a core value of the renouncer. This makes the Brahmin this fascinating mediating category, kind of bridging the gap between the social world of the king and the asocial world of the sannyasi. Okay, so we've seen how this structural logic works with people, but what's really cool is that it doesn't stop there. It applies to the very fabric of religious life, ritual. So now we're going to shift from the world of those caste Puranas to a different set of texts, the Griha Sutras, which deal with all the domestic rites. Now, you might already know about the famous Purusha Sukta text. It explains the origin of the castes using this hierarchical model of a cosmic body: Brahmins from the head, Shudras from the feet, and so on. But the domestic rituals use a completely different blueprint. Here, the body is divided symmetrically into a binary opposition: the right side versus the left side. And when you lay it all out, this reveals an incredibly consistent symbolic code. Just look at this. Rites for the gods, which are all about life and auspiciousness, they consistently use the right side, you face life-giving directions like east, and you involve pure offerings like grain. But then you have the rituals for the ancestors, which are tied to the powerful and kind of dangerous realm of death, and those are dominated by the left side and the southern direction. Now, as the sociologist Robert Hertz pointed out, this pattern shows up in a lot of cultures. But Dosh shows it's way more complex than just good versus bad. The left side isn't simply evil, it's the side that deals with these powerful, dangerous forces, like ancestors. Now, these ancestors can be threatening, sure, but if you propitiate them properly through these left-sided rituals, they have the power to give you crucial boons like wealth and, most importantly, children.
Okay, so let's zoom back out. How does this whole conceptual framework, this grammar of oppositions and relationships, help us understand not just a static picture of society, but also things like social change and conflict?
Well, the texts explain history through a cycle of 4 ages, or yugas. It starts with a perfect, pure first age, but as time goes on, the moral order declines. First, the king is needed to enforce dharma. Then heretical sects pop up, challenging the established order. And finally, in our current corrupt age, the Kali Yuga, the rules themselves have to adapt. The underlying dharma, the deep structure, it doesn't change, but certain practices are forbidden, just to protect that core structure from the weakness of us modern humans.
This same logic explains real social dynamics, like why castes split. The Puranas tell the story of how a group of Brahmins, the Mallas, became a totally separate division. And why? Well, it's because they broke the conceptual rules. They moved to foreign lands, they started wearing foreign clothes, and they took up the foreign profession of wrestling. By crossing these conceptual boundaries, they were redefined as a whole new social unit.
So what is the big takeaway here? What does all this mean? Well, looking at Hindu society through this lens reveals a world that's understood not as a static ladder, but as a dynamic grammar. It's a system that's defined by the relationships between conceptual poles, like Brahman, king, and sannyasi, by these binary oppositions like right and left, and by the fascinating mediating categories that bridge them. And that really leaves us with a final provocative thought. Veena Das's analysis gives us a key, a way to unlock the cognitive structure of one specific worldview. It shows how the surface-level rules can change and adapt to preserve a deeper, more enduring conceptual order. Which kind of makes you ask, right? What are the hidden structures, the unspoken grammars that might be shaping our own societies and our own ways of thinking right now?